really wanted to put in some distance before we got to this one. I've always avoided blowing smoke up your ass, but I am aware that the past few new Trek reviews, my view differs significantly from public view. It's part and parcel of the process, and it might have something to do with the fact that the scale system is series-based, so that even knowing it's a comparison to the series as a whole might make it difficult to parse a lower score for an enjoyable episode simply because the series overall just has a higher level of quality to it, in my opinion, so that good episodes aren't necessarily good enough to get a score that someone might think they deserve. And alternatively, maybe I've just become an unpleasable asshole. I'm willing to admit maybe I'm the problem here. But that's why I kind of wished we'd have more time before we got to a Neelix episode. I mean, that's just unfair. That's taking a food critic to a beloved Burger King. Ugh. Well, let's get down to the episode. Just because it's Neelix doesn't mean that it's going to infuriate me.
Ambassador's log.
Oh, FFS. What did I do to deserve this?
Commander Tuvok certainly hasn't been the most sociable of travel companions.
Mr. Neelix.
Well, I can see I'm not the only one having that thought. Neelix tries to get Tuvok to play with him like a bored child, until finally challenges him to solve a riddle. The riddle: an ensign is stranded alone on a Class L planetoid with nothing but a calendar, yet somehow doesn't starve to death. What's the answer?
Because he feasted on dates from the calendar.
I hate my life. Tuvok points out that this is not a riddle, it's a frickin' dad joke.
Now, if you'll excuse me.
Where are you going?
To find some peace and quiet.
Sounds great. Can I join you? We could sing sea shanties. Tuvok discovers something happening at the tactical station back here, and when he tries scanning with a tricorder, someone invisible shoots him. Tuvok comes face to face with the unthinkable, Neelix arriving with a phaser offering to help. After the titles...
He's in neuroleptic shock. I'll need another 20 milligrams of synaptazine.
I'll get it.
I'll be generous and say that there is only a 50-50 chance that it'll come back with a laxative. Well, alas, that colored liquid wasn't enough. They're going to have to go with the tried and true neck thingy, which eventually stabilizes Tuvok's vital signs, but he suffered some serious brain damage. And Neelix admits that he didn't think to scan for cloaked ships.
You saved Tuvok's life, Neelix. You have nothing to be sorry about.
Well, related to this anyway. Everything else? Oh boy. If we piled up everything you should be sorry for, it'd probably fall over and kill somebody. To try to figure out who did this and why, security agent Narak is sent by the species that Tuvok and Neelix were visiting. It turns out that he is intended as an alien parody of Fox Mulder. He's a fringe believer in the Beneth, or Shadow People, that he blames for this attack. Hence why Tuvok and Neelix weren't told about them. Most people believe that they're a myth, but he thinks they're highly secretive and xenophobic, although whether or not they do anal probing is not brought up. Janeway is skeptical, but the fact Tuvok might have found a cloaking frequency on the now ruined tricorder does lend his crazy theory some credibility.
Captain, I don't blame you for finding my theories a bit eccentric. I'm used to it. It's why I'm still a deputy investigator. But I brought equipment to help your investigation.
It's a dowsing rod, some crystals, and a light meter. After looking Tuvok over, Narak and Janeway head to the Delta Flyer, while Neelix stays to inflict joy on those in sickbay. Roxanne Dawson directed this episode, which helped launch her very successful directing career, and this episode already shows why she'd so successfully pull that off. Ethan Phillips, likewise, is a fine actor, who it seems is given directing that leans on odious comic relief. But now that the fun and games are done, the character is suddenly given a sense of deeper dimensions to him. I am self-aware enough to know that after this long, there is never going to be more than at most grudging tolerance in me for Neelix, but I will admit, on rare occasions like this, seen in sickbay, where he wants to in some way help, that there is a genuineness to it that I can respect. One thing that frequently bugs me about Neelix is that even when he seems to be thinking about others, it's about him. Here, this isn't the case. It's not that he feels guilty in any way and wants to help. It's not that he's butting in or convinced that he should do this or that. What Phillips is projecting is that Neelix can't bear to think about Tuvok being like this. Yeah, this is quickly drowned out by the inflicting joy that I was talking about, but fair is fair. I wanted to acknowledge it at least.
Selection 56 Alpha.
Damn, listening to that gives me the urge to fight Shao Kahn. The doctor asks Neelix to perhaps knock this off before he gets hit with a blast of that liquid laxative. But actually, it's worked. Tuvok is sitting up. He's not saying or understanding anything, but he's conscious. That's definitely an important step forward as far as returning to normal goes. Very rarely does being in a coma better fit your lifestyle. During all of this, Narok's goofy-looking tech has detected some particles that shows a Beneth cloaking field was here. And with Seven's improvements, they're able to see what it looked like.
Tentacles. I always suspected they were multipeds.
The more this goes on, the more I get the feeling this guy is faking all this to try to get support for his theory. I mean, that is not the plot, but I would not have been surprised if it was. Neelix has put Tuvok at ease and starts taking him around the ship to help try to get his brain going again, seeing the familiar sights and all that good stuff that happens on a daily basis around Voyager. Definitely nothing that would make you want to crawl back into a coma. They wind up in Tuvok's quarters when Seven is running a test. See, they used what they had learned from that scan to modify the deflector, and now they could theoretically detect cloaked ships if they were nearby. And in fact, they do detect cloaked ships. Yes, plural.
This is Captain Catherine Janeway of the Federation starship Voyager.
And I demand one of your cloaks of invisibility, and a wand that can let me fly. The ships fire at them a couple times, but they're making a run for it, eventually getting too far away to be detectable. But the excitement has gotten to Tuvok. He's kind of worried and hiding there, but eventually that passes. Tuvok finally reaches the point where he can actually speak again.
You're Neelix. I'm safe with you.
Oh no, the damage is even worse than we thought. Janeway and Narok try questioning Tuvok on what happened, but shockingly, the guy who just remembered how to make his lips work can't recall the cloaking frequency that he read right before he was brain damaged. In keeping with this aiming ridiculously high approach, Harry Kim tries to get Tuvok to play Calto with him, which is basically like challenging someone who just had their legs reattached a few days ago to some parkour. He's rather annoyed very quickly and bothered that he is not the man that he once was.
You're still the same person.
Then why do I no longer work on the bridge?
Well, even Janeway knows that'd be a bad idea. Lord knows how many of you are doing crazy things without having your eggs scrambled. Remember when Harry declared war on an alien ship for saying hello? I think what Neelix said is an important point to take on board, the first and last time that I will ever make that statement. Tuvok is the same person. He's just been impacted by a physical injury. When you're drunk or high or even enraged, you don't cease to be you, regardless of what chemistry is happening to you. You're just you operating while something is affecting your thinking. We're not seeing a new being developing from a blank slate here. This is Tuvok, but with physical and possibly psychological trauma that is causing him to function in a capacity that is significantly different from before. Tuvok has been hurt and is learning to live with what might be a permanent consequence of that injury. Let's not forget that fact. And that is not code for anything else, just so we're clear here. Unless you're suffering from serious traumatic injury to the brain, then don't get mad thinking I'm referring to you.
It's the pipe. I have a piece of pipe in my head. Oh, I don't get many visitors. Please, sit.
See, unless you're this guy, I probably don't mean you. Complicating things is that Tuvok has powerful emotions, being a Vulcan and all that, but it takes time to develop the skills to control them. It gets so out of control that Neelix has to leave for his own safety, although certainly that's not the first time that sentence has needed to be uttered. So Neelix finds Seven in the mess hall, thinking about her own quandary of finding the Beneth, and brings it around to the riddle that Neelix is dealing with.
When is a Vulcan no longer a Vulcan?
When his genetic code is sufficiently altered.
Exactly. Tuvok is obviously a werewolf. That's just logic. Neelix is frustrated, which is a rare situation. It's kind of like Saudi Arabia importing oil. But Seven points out that Janeway helped her after she lost all that she had by helping her to become something new here. Rather than working to turn Tuvok back into his old self, it may be necessary to help him become functional as he is. Again, we're talking about a physical injury here. If Tuvok lost a leg in our time, he would have to find a way to adjust his life to accommodate that. And it might take a long time, if ever, to be able to do everything that he used to do to the same degree that he could. But that's all that can be done. Time only flows in one direction, after all. Well, unless you've had some of that Romulan marijuana. That is some good shit. Tuvok has spent this time making Neelix a flower out of candle wax, further encouraging Neelix to help him explore new things rather than bringing the old Tuvok back. Exactly, though. Help him find his way to a new path, to a new life.
Here we are. A triple chocolate Wiki fruit sundae with warm Fetrin sauce.
That wasn't what I had in mind. Please don't turn the ship's tactical officer to Tom Hanks in Big. Janeway comes by, and at her prompting, he thinks about the cloaking frequency some more, and finally he draws it on a cake. The answer to the riddle, and finally, a cake that can be brought to celebrate Invisible Man Day. They use that to find what the Beneth are hiding, a space station, which begins firing on them. So Janeway threatens to tell everyone where this hidden base is to get them to stop shooting and pick up the phone. And in exchange for tactical information on other species and Narok's doohickey so they can adapt to that technology, the Beneth will give information on the weapon so the damage to Tuvok's brain can be corrected. This would, of course, then provide a species with no compunction about committing murder information on the military and technological capabilities of other species, while simultaneously preventing anyone else from being able to detect them in the future this way, ensuring that they can continue to spy and kill without fear. Where's the downside? I mean, as a Vulcan would no doubt say, the needs of the many are less important than the needs of the few, or the one. Let's make that trade. Tuvok seems more interested in this way of life, and why shouldn't he be? I mean, while he does have to change, you can't just indulge his every whim here to try to find direction, because he won't find direction. He's definitely going to not develop the self-discipline that he's going to need if all you do is indulge his desires for desserts and water parks, especially as a Vulcan who needs to control his emotions. Those things are fine, they spice up life, but your life cannot just consist of 31 flavors in the Wisconsin Dells. But the doctor has a way to correct the brain damage and then, hit the reset button for this episode. It's just that Tuvok doesn't like that idea.
Why do you want me to go back to the way I was?
Because this crew needs its tactical officer on the bridge.
Well, they do have Harry up there right now. I suppose I can't argue with that. While I don't particularly like that answer as the answer, there are a lot more important reasons, like that issue of controlling his Vulcan emotions in order to justify it. But the answer doesn't need to be the most correct answer. It needs to be the most convincing answer. Because it does convince him. It suggests that Neelix understands Tuvok at a fundamental level, that despite the childishness of the way that he has been growing since that incident, that ultimately, duty and responsibility are the motivation that he's going to need to go through with this. And so, after he has the operation, Tuvok comes by the mess hall, his old self again, but he does make a small joke about the riddle that Neelix had told at the beginning, to show a small change. It was just a little one, just enough to get past the reset button for the next few seconds until the credits. Post-episode follow-up, stupid Neelix moment goes to him annoying Tuvok into the situation in the first place. If he just found some way to amuse himself, none of this would have happened. Now we've reached the inevitable point. I'm going to still be honest with you. I give Riddles a score of 6 out of 10. Slightly above average for Voyager, which, considering it's a Neelix episode, should already be a sign that I'm trying to be fair. Tim Rush shows his range as an actor, and Ethan Phillips brings something more to his role, and that's not nothing. But the episode wants to be one thing, the relationship with Neelix and Tuvok. It opens up the door to so many other tantalizing things that I find the stuff that I'd like to explore are neglected as a result. The baddies of this episode had potential as much more than just the B-plot of one episode. They could have been an interesting, terrifying menace. And the implications for a Vulcan being in this predicament doesn't get sufficient time. The episode did what it set out to do, much the same way you might deliberately drive to the Hoover Dam, but people coming along for the ride might have wanted to spend some time in Las Vegas too. It is enjoyable for what it is, but disappoints in not being more.